right. Hello, everyone. And I just really want to thank Ina today for coming to speak to us about which fats heal and which fats kill. And, we were talking before the presentation, and I was like, I'm going to allow her to pronounce her last name because, there's many, many letters of the alphabet there. So, Ina, thank you so much for joining us. And so I'm going to ask anyone who has any questions during the presentation, if you can just put those questions in the chat, and there's going to be plenty of time after the presentation for questions and answers. And so I'll probably just mute anyone as well who comes in. All right. So take it away, Ina.
Great. Well, hi, guys. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to have a great little talk about the fabulous life of fats. And I have to admit that I completely stole the title, Which Fats Heal and Which Fats Kill, from this awesome book, which I highly, highly recommend you read. And it's called Fats That Heal and Fats That Kill. So at least I modified it a little bit. But that's where it's come from. Yeah, it's the book is written by Udo something. His last name is probably similar to mine. So highly recommend you read it. A little bit about me. I am in Huntsville. I moved here about 3 years ago from Toronto. I love it. The best and hopefully last move for me. I have my home-based practice where I practice massage therapy, lymphedema therapy, and nutrition, focusing in oncology nutrition. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about, just like I mentioned, the fabulous life of fats, and what is fat and what is oil. We'll differentiate between those two, and of course, which fats are harmful and which fats are healthy. That's the whole reason why we're here today. We're going to find out where do they come from, the healthy fats and the harmful fats. The controversial subjects of seed oil, should we avoid them? Should we not avoid them? We'll talk about that as well. Lots of myths we'll be busting today. Which fat is good to cook with? And that was one of the reasons what inspired for me to make this talk. A lot of my clients always ask me what's good to cook with and what's not. And I find that I tell them, but then they forget. So once you understand the fundamental concepts, there is nothing that you have to commit to memory. And we're going to go over the fundamental concepts. That way you won't forget because there is nothing to remember. All right. What is cholesterol and the unfairly bad reputation that cholesterol has? And what are triglycerides? So those are usually the things that you see on your conventional lab work. So to start, we're going to look at kind of zoom out and look at the macronutrients and micronutrients and where fats fit in those two big categories. So macronutrients, those are our carbohydrates, and the building blocks for those is usually glucose and fructose. We have proteins, and those are made of amino acids. And of course, we have fats or lipids. They're the same thing. And they're made of what's called fatty acids. We also have micronutrients, and those are your vitamins and minerals. Now, the difference between macro and micro is the amount in which they're required in our bodies. And we need a lot more macronutrients than we need micronutrients, and that's what drives the nomenclature. All right, so fatty acids, the worlds of fat. So fatty acids, just like we mentioned, they are the building blocks of our fats or lipids and oils. We have two kinds. We have saturated and unsaturated. So we're going to learn what makes a fat saturated and what makes a fat unsaturated and why do we need both. So saturated are further divided into two categories, monosaturated and polyunsaturated, MUFA and PUFA for short. Now, we're about to go to the next slide, and we're going to see a little bit of chemistry. Usually this is where people tend to tune out. I am not a fan of chemistry, just like a lot of people. Just a little side note about my despise for chemistry and where it started. My despise for chemistry started in grade 13 of high school. And for those of you guys who are not from Ontario, grade 13 is something we used to have back when I was young and vibrant. I'm still vibrant. So grade 13 is something you had to take in your high school as your final year in preparation to go to university as opposed to college. So if you wanted to go to university, you had to take grade 13. And all of my friends were planning on going to university. So I figured, that's where I should go to. In addition, my mother told me I have no choice. I have to go to university. So, but I was not very good at grade 13 chemistry. And my grade 13 chemistry teacher actually told me he has no idea why am I taking grade 13 chemistry, because I have no hopes of being accepted into any university. So my dislike of chemistry grew exponentially after that experience. But I did go to university, so my grade 13 chemistry teacher can suck it. And my experience with chemistry in university was not much better. My professor was much better, but the problem was that we had chemistry on Friday mornings and pub nights were on Thursday nights. So it was a bit of a conflict, but I managed. So anyways, if you don't like what's gonna come up for the next couple of minutes, I feel your pain, but hang in there. I simplified it as much as I could, so it's not gonna be all that bad. Like I said, the point of this, guys, if we understand the fundamental concept, there is nothing we have to remember. So if we're gonna be in a grocery store and we're gonna be like, oh shit, which fat is good, which is bad, I don't remember, you won't have to, because you'll understand it, right? So there we go. Okay, so here it is. We have two molecules. Okay, that's what these guys are. So this is a carbon chain. So it's made up of carbons. These letter C's, they stand for carbon. We have one like this and one like this at the bottom. Okay, so lots of carbons and they look the same. The only difference is the tails, right? The stuff at the end. So that's what differentiates them. So obviously this one says saturated and this one says unsaturated. So the top one is a molecule of saturated fat and the bottom one is a molecule of unsaturated fat. Now, what makes them saturated versus unsaturated? You may have noticed these red two lines. So these lines in between carbons, they represent chemical bonds, okay? One line is a single bond, two lines is a double bond. Now, intuitively, we think of double is more, stronger, better, but in the world of chemistry, things are sometimes not intuitive and sometimes they just downright don't make sense to people like me. And this is one example. Double is not stronger than single. As a matter of fact, it's the other way around. Single is stronger than double. So that's chemistry for you. But anyways, so this is the difference between saturated and unsaturated. This is the only difference. Saturated has absolutely zero double bonds. They're all single guys, like me. So here, unsaturated, there could be one double bond and that will make it unsaturated fat, or two, or three, or a gazillion. Okay, you only need one to put it into the category of unsaturated fat. Okay, the other thing that you will notice, saturated fat is a straight line. This double bond changes the shape of the molecule. It adds this little kink. See, it's not straight anymore. And that plays it's a big difference because it will dictate its properties. and what they do once they enter our bodies, and what makes one good and what makes one bad. Okay, so it's a key difference. Now, if we were to take a whole bunch of these molecules and stack them together, this is what they would look like. Okay, saturated, you see how they make this tightly formed fort almost. Okay, so if this was your fence made of saturated fat, this is what it would look like. It's a nice fence if you want to keep stuff out. Like in my case, I have skunks that are driving me crazy. So I need something like this. Okay. Now, if your fats only contain unsaturated fats, this is what it would look like. And that's kind of what my fence looks like now. Anyone can come in and go as they please, including my chickens. Okay. So the thing is that our fats, they do many things for us. One of the things that they do is they are part of our cell membrane. So we have cells, our body is made of cells, our organs and tissues are made of cells, and those cells have membranes around them. Also, there are things in our cells called organelles, and those organelles have membranes around them. Okay, it's like a house. You know, picture a house. Your house is made up of walls and windows and doors, right? Not much can get through the wall. So that's your saturated fat. But imagine if your house was only built out of walls. That's it. Can you get in or out? Well, if you're in, you're not getting out. And if you're out, you're not getting in. So that's not good, right? Imagine if your house was built of just unsaturated fats for your wall. Things will be going in and out willy-nilly. So that's not a good idea either. So just like everything in holistic health, it's the balance. Okay, we need both. We need saturated and unsaturated. Unsaturated fats, they allow for the membrane fluidity. They allow for good things to come in, for bad things to go out if everything's working right. And saturated fats, they allow for the membrane rigidity. So they block bad things from coming in and they keep the things that we need in. Okay, so this is the difference between saturated and unsaturated fats. And this difference is dictated by the presence of these double bonds because they change the shape of the molecules. Therefore, they change the functions of the membranes in which they're present. All right. So this is as complex as it gets for chemistry, guys. Okay. So I hope I didn't lose you. We're still here. Good. So let's get to know saturated and unsaturated fats. So saturated fats, they're solid at room temperature. Why? Because of their straight line structure. Remember that fence that is built nice and tight and nothing can get in. While unsaturated fats, because of that kink that the double bond creates, they're liquid at room temperature. So your oils, which will be liquid at room temperature, with the exception of coconut and palm oil, because that's saturated. And it's called oil. I don't know why it's called oil, but it's not liquid at room temperature. Okay, so that's the difference. So when it comes to stability, saturated fats are stable when you expose them to things like heat, light, and air. Okay, as opposed to unsaturated fats, they're not stable when you expose them to heat, light, and air. And this is due to that double and single bonds, right? Remember when I said we would think double is stronger? No, double is not stronger. So double bonds that make unsaturated fat unsaturated are a lot weaker. So when you expose them to these three things, heat, light, and air, those bonds break. And that changes the molecule of the fat, or it oxidizes it, in other words. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind, that saturated fats, they're okay when it comes to exposure to heat, light, and air. Unsaturated fats are not, because double bonds make them unstable. So you want to minimize exposure to those three things. So as a result of that, what's good for cooking? Well, saturated fats are good for cooking because you're exposing it to heat, right? So they have single bonds. Those single bonds are very stable, so it's okay to use them with heat. Unsaturated fats are not great for cooking because they have double bonds, and those are weaker bonds, okay? So that answers that question. So storage and treatment of unsaturated fats is very important. You want to preserve them. Unsaturated fats, they're very much like, I always compare them to my mother, okay? The analogy is very fitting. They're unsaturated fats. If you treat them the way that they need to be treated, they will be your number one fan. They will do great many things for you, okay? If you don't treat them the way that they need to be treated, they will become very toxic and they will make your life a living hell, okay? So that's the thing to know about unsaturated fats. They're fantastic for our health, but you have to kind of walk on eggshells around them, okay? You have to be very careful with them, kind of like a newborn, you know? You have to yeah, like that. So you have to store them in airtight containers. Why? Because that's one of the three things, air. You have to store them in dark containers to minimize their exposure to light, okay? And definitely away from heat. Glass containers is fantastic because anytime you store food in plastic ware, plastic does leach into your food or into your beverages. So especially fat and oil. I mean fat and oil, fat and acidity. So anytime your plastic is exposed to any kind of fat or acidity, a lot more of it leaches into that food, and then you eat it. And then your body, we have not evolved to be able to process plastic yet. So it gets stored in your joints and in your fat tissue. Then things like joint pain comes, then things like autoimmunity comes because it pisses off your immune system to the point where it becomes dysregulated. And, then things like obesity, it drives obesity because we need fat to sequester our toxins, so your body tends to store more of it. So lots of things happen down the stream. So use glass containers to store your food or your beverages. So this is the relationship. The bigger the saturation, so the more saturated the fat is, the higher is the stability, the less is oxidation. Oxidation means it's going rancid. Okay, it's like iron, getting rusted. That's your oxidation. Okay, so that's the thing, the relationship to know between saturated fats and unsaturated fats and their stability. Now here's a picture of a lovely set, and it looks like there is balsamic vinegar and some sort of oil, and most of us have this in our kitchens, or we give it for gifts like Christmas, birthdays, and whatever. And most of us, we actually keep it next to the stove because we use it for cooking, so it's nice and handy. This is a bad idea to store your oils. Why? Because it's exposed to light. It looks like it's a glass container, so that's great, but it should be tinted, and it definitely should not be near your oven or your stove. All right, so don't give these for gifts and don't use them yourself. All right, unless you can get tinted bottle, and make sure it's airtight and store it away from heat. So that's the way to store your good quality oil. Now, when it comes to good quality oil, this is the thing, guys. The extraction process that is involved in extracting oil from whether it's seeds or grains or your olives or avocados is important, and this is usually where things go wrong. Why? Because once the oil is extracted, it gets exposed a lot to things like heat, light, and air. So by the time it's extracted and processed, and arrives to your grocery store shelves, it's got rancid and it turned into inflammatory oil long time ago. All right. So if there was a way for us to extract the oil and put it in our mouth, that would be great, regardless what oil you use. Okay. But that way isn't there. So that's why refined oils are bad, because by the time it's processed, it's been exposed to heat, light, and air a lot, and those things turned it into inflammatory oil long time ago. So by the time we get it in our stores, it's not doing us any good. It's actually doing us a lot of bad. Okay, so avoid that way of storing your oils, and that answers your question of seed oils. Are they bad or are they good? They're not bad in themselves, but like I said, the problem is by the time they're extracted and by the time we get access to them, they've gone bad long time ago. Okay, they have to, because when you extract oil, and especially, things like seed oils, these are highly unsaturated oils. So as we mentioned, the more unsaturated an oil is, the more unstable it is. So when it gets exposed to heat, light, and air, it goes rancid and it starts to smell. So they have to process it further to neutralize that smell, to neutralize that awful taste. So that means exposure to a myriad of chemicals that do that. Deodorizers, emulsifiers, preservatives, like lots of stuff, okay? And those chemicals, they do remain in the oil. Yeah, maybe not much, but when you use that oil on a daily basis, it collects. So, and yeah, like I said, by the time you get that oil, there is nothing good left in it. And especially, when you buy it in gigantic jugs at stores like Costco, that's not oil. Stay away from it. Okay, so seed oils, there is nothing wrong with them, but we don't have access to good quality oil. So I don't recommend you use it. So there is a controversy solved there. What I do recommend is use extra virgin cold pressed olive oil or avocado oil or coconut oil. So that's when it comes to oils. Why extra virgin? So extra virgin means this is the oil that you get from the first press of the fruit. Okay, so that's the oil that's going to contain a lot of antioxidants and a lot of nutrients that are contained in the fruit itself. Why cold pressed? You want to minimize heat, because we know what heat does to unsaturated fats. Okay. Olive oil and avocado oil. So those are the things that are the easiest to extract oil from. So that's why I would stick with those. Other ones, it's harder to extract oil from them, and we need to use a lot of pressure, which produces heat. We need to use a lot of pressure, which involves exposure to things like light and air, and all of those things, like we just talked about, they spoil the oil. So yeah, and of course, coconut oil is a saturated fat, no double bonds, nice strong single bonds. It's stable, it's good. So for cooking, definitely go with saturated fats like coconut oil, and unsaturated fats, stick with olive or avocado oil, and they should be used as a garnish. All right. So sprinkle it on your dishes, on your salads. And this is why, like, I get a lot of commentary saying that good quality oils are expensive. Yes, they are. Okay. Because when it comes to most things in life, you get what you pay for. Okay. And, like, we have two choices. We can either pay for health or disease. So we choose what we're going to pay for. Okay. With these oils, you're not going to use a ton of it. So you're using it as a dressing and as a garnish, right? So you're not going to use a lot. So therefore, yes, it will be more expensive, but because we don't use a lot, we can accommodate that increase in price. You know, you can go with vegetable oil. You can buy like, I don't know, 10 liters for $3. And you will save a lot of money, but you know, the money that you will save, you better hang on to it because you're gonna need that for your sickness down the road. So yeah, that's how it works, guys. Okay. And also, you know, what are good oils? You know, my rule of thumb is to go with smaller productions, because the thing is that when it comes to quality, most of the time, it's very difficult for businesses to scale and maintain quality without raising the price. Like something's got to give here. If you are scaling, meaning like you're increasing production, you're everywhere, you're at every Costco store, you're at every Walmart store, like you're very ubiquitous, right? So you're producing a lot. If you're going to maintain quality, price will have to rise. So if you can be everywhere and you're not going to raise the price, you have to compromise on quality. So that's why when I look at things like, you know, I'm skeptical. When I look at things that are sold in great many quantities everywhere, and it says, you know, organic and all those lovely things, I don't know. I question it. I question it. Like, I'm not saying they're full of shit, but it's very likely that they are, because I don't see how they can do it, you know? Like, how do you sell a bottle of extra virgin, cold pressed, organic, lovely, great for $10 of olive oil? How do you do that? I don't know. I don't know. So that's how I approach it. I go with you know, brand names that are small productions. You know, they're not in every store, and usually you can find these types of things like in your smaller, you know, health food stores, or in your co-op stores, you know, stores that deal with smaller scale producers. That's where you find quality. And that's usually the case with everything, not just oil. That's the case with, you know, meat. That's the case with, you know, produce, everything. If you stick with smaller productions, you're more likely to maintain quality. So that's how I do it. Okay, that works for you. You can use that too. Okay, so I have this this thing in my this bar at the top of my screen, and I don't know how to move it. But anyways, so saturated fats. What do they do for us? I think that's what's behind that bar. Find out. Oh, sources. Yes. Where do they come from? Saturated fats, they come from basically animal fats, animal sourced fats. That's where they come from. So that's your animal meat, that's your butter, you know, your dairy. Exception to the rule is coconut oil or palm oil. So those are saturated fats, but they're not from animals. So those are the only two exceptions. The rest, most of the time, saturated fats come from animals. Okay. Now, unsaturated fats, they come from your fish. They come from your vegetables like, you know, olives, avocados, your nuts and seeds. And yeah, those are the kind of common sources of good, healthy, unsaturated fats. Now, notice, you know, like I don't want to say sunflower oil stuff or canola oil, because yes, those are unsaturated fats, but like we said, those are highly polyunsaturated fats, with the exception of olive and avocado oil. I generally don't use those because by the time I get to them, they've already been oxidized a long time ago. So if you want good preserved polyunsaturated fats, go with the vegetable or the fruit itself. Okay, so you know, to get your seed oils, eat the seeds. To get your, you know, like almond oil or whatever other, eat the nuts. Okay, And with nuts and seeds, it's a good idea to pre-soak them overnight because they're covered with this thing called phytic acid. And that's the layer that protects them and preserves them, especially things like seeds. Like seeds, I read somewhere recently where they found seeds from like prehistoric times, even before dinosaurs, these seeds existed and they found them somewhere and they sprouted them, and they like these seeds they sprouted. So this is how powerful this coating is. So when we consume these seeds, it's really hard to digest that coating, that phytic acid. So the nutrients inside the seeds, and there's plenty of them, it's hard to get to them. So when you soak them overnight or something like somewhere around 6 to 7 hours, you dissolve that coating. So the nutrients become a lot more bioavailable. So pre-soak your nuts and seeds. Now, flaxseed is fantastic, especially at preventing hormone-driven cancers. Very relevant in breast cancer. However, and it's an amazing source of your omega-3s, which we will get to know in a moment. Flaxseed, you have to grind it. If you don't grind it, you will meet all of it in your poop, okay? It will not be digested. So you have to grind it. But because it's a highly, highly unsaturated fatty acid, which is great, it's highly, highly reactive to oxygen, light, and air, which is not great. So when you grind it, you want to eat it like basically shortly after you grind it. So that's what, like when I see things in stores and health food stores too, flax meal. So it's already grounded and it's being sold in bags and things. I'm like, that is carcinogenic, man. By the amount of time it's sat there on the shelf, no, like that's poison. Don't eat that stuff. Okay. So flaxseed, grind it as you need it. Okay. And chia seeds are fantastic, but you do need to soak them overnight. And when you soak them overnight, they will turn into this kind of jelly-like consistency, which is great if you want to have things like mousse. Like what I do is I take a couple of tablespoons of chia seeds and I throw them in like, I don't know, half a cup to a cup of water overnight. And the next morning I add, a couple of tablespoons of yogurt and throw in a couple of fruits, mix it up. And it's the consistency of pudding. Yeah, it makes like a great, great pudding. So, and fantastic for your gut lining too. So that's where you get your unsaturated fats from things like seeds and nuts. All right, so those are the sources. Now, what do fats do for us? They do great many things. Like we talked about, they're part of our cell membrane. So they give us the stability that our cells need, as well as the fluidity that our cells need. So remember, things need to be able to go in and out. And that will be dictated by your unsaturated fats, right? Because they add to the fluidity. Now, things can't go in and out willy-nilly. We need, some sort of control, like according to Donald Trump, build a wall. We need to build a little bit of a wall. So not as much as he wants, but a little bit. When it comes to cellular membrane only. So we do need saturated fats. So that's why, this premise of, minimize the consumption of saturated fats. Yeah, like don't go overboard with saturated fats, but we need them. It's all about balance, right? That's your holistic health. Too much of anything is not good, and it's all about balance. So what do they do for us? They give us energy storage. That's how we store energy. All right. So when we consume things, we use them for energy, and whatever we don't use, we store, right? It's kind of like we make we earn a living, we make money, we spend some, and whatever we don't spend, we save. I don't know what that's like. I'm still working on that part, but you know, some people manage to save. So so, and you know, in your bank account, the currency of those savings would be money. So the currency of fat storage is something called triglycerides. Okay, so that's what triglycerides are. They're the currency of your savings account in your body. Okay, and it doesn't matter what you eat, whether you eat carbohydrates, whether you eat proteins, whether you eat fats, anything in excess will be converted to triglycerides and stored as fat. Okay, so just like in life, you know, some people have bigger savings accounts in their banks, and you know, some people have bigger savings accounts in their bodies. So that's what your triglycerides are. They're the currency of storage, and we need to store. You know, we've evolved to store excess energy because there used to be a time when food wasn't available, and there still is that time for some people at a lot of, you know, parts of the world. But for a lot of us, you know, we are privileged and blessed to not have that time. But that's what triglycerides are. And triglycerides are, you know, like, I mean, don't get intimidated and don't be like, oh my God, chemistry again. So they're made with, you know, this thing called glycerol. So that's your backbone. And then these three prongs, these are your fatty acids. Okay, so that's what your triglycerides are. What else do fatty acids do for us? Like we mentioned, they're part of the cell membrane. They contribute to, you know, who comes in and who goes out. So that's important. They're needed for hormone production, you know, in particular, you know, things like sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, things like that. So that's why a lot of sometimes when you don't have enough fat on you, with women, especially with women athletes, they lose their period because your estrogen and progesterone gets affected. So you don't, you know, ovulation is affected and your period is affected. Okay. They're needed for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. So those are your vitamin A, D, E, and K. If you don't have enough fat, you're not going to be absorbing those vitamins. Okay. Absolute must for brain health and brain development. So that's a thing to look at in cases of any kind of brain dysfunction, mood disorders, you know, anxiety, depression, autism, ADD, ADHD, Alzheimer's, dementia, you know, anything that happens north of the neck. They regulate inflammation. They increase it and then they also decrease it. And there are times when we do need inflammation. The problem is that, you know, these days it's that inflammation goes for way too long, longer than we need to. They regulate our metabolism. So in the cases of, you know, slow metabolism, excess weight, obesity, that's something to consider. They're a critical part of our immune function. And they protect our organs. They provide the insulation that's needed as a shock absorption, and they also help to regulate the temperature that is needed around our organs so that they can function properly. So they do great many things for us, and they're of course involved in heart health because they affect the viscosity of your blood, and that will drive your blood pressure, and that will drive how hard your heart has to work. Okay, so how do I move this bar that's at the top of my screen? Oh, there we go. Now, how do I get rid of it? Okay, that's fine. Trans fats. So trans fats, unlike, you know, saturated fats and unlike its friend cholesterol that we will talk about shortly, they have bad rap unfairly for not a good reason. Trans fats, these guys suck, and for the right reasons, okay? These are not good guys, trans fats, okay? What are they? So where is my next slide? You see, this is, these are called technical difficulties, guys. So I've pressed enter about like 10 times now. So when it finally will catch up, get ready for the circus. But anyways, I don't know what's going on, but we'll talk about trans fats anyways. So trans fats, they are formed from unsaturated fats when those unsaturated fats gets exposed to things like heat, light, and air. Okay, so they're formed as part of that process. Okay, now the reason why they're not good for us is because if my PowerPoint was working, I could show you the picture, but my PowerPoint is not working. Maybe if I stop sharing and start it again, let me try that. Because I really want you to see that.
Try that.
Yeah, I want you to see that picture. Okay, so I stop sharing and then share screen again. There's my screen. Or should I start from this? I'm gonna start from the beginning. Okay, share. Okay, so where did we stop? Oh, my love of technology. Okay, okay, so we're gonna start from this slide. Now let's see what happens. Ah, my picture. Okay, okay. So just a little bit more chemistry, guys. So you see the picture on top, this is our unsaturated fatty acids. You must likely remember it from the beginning, because when you saw this picture at the beginning, you must have been like, oh my God, how beautiful, right? So, so this is what unsaturated fatty acid looks like. If you don't piss it off, if you treat it right, that's what it will look like, okay? And if you piss it off, meaning you expose it to things it shouldn't be exposed to, you will form what's called trans fats. You see how double bond remains there, but the hydrogens are switched. Instead of having two at the top, one is at the top, one is at the bottom. So what happened here? We've changed the shape of the molecule. There's no more kink, okay? So that will tell your body that this is the saturated fat molecule because it's straight. But that's not quite true, because there's a double bond. It can't be saturated. If it was saturated, there would be no double bond, okay? So when our body encounters that, it says, what the hell is this? I'm very confused. It's straight, so I thought it was saturated fat, but what the hell is this double bond here? That can't be saturated fat. So your body says, I don't know what the hell to do with it, so I'm going to store it, okay? And it accumulates. So when it enters your cell membrane, it changes the function of cell membrane. So now it affects what goes in, what goes out, okay? And that's not good. So trans fats are not great. And this is the thing, guys. So when you buy things like vegetable shortening, now what's the problem there? The problem there is that it says it's heart healthy, your margarine, okay? It's heart healthy because it doesn't have saturated fats. It's low in saturated fats, okay? Fine. But, oh, and then another thing it says, it's from vegetables. Vegetables are good, right? Now, my question is, how did you go from unsaturated fat, which is supposed to be liquid at room temperature, if you don't piss it off, to solid fat at room temperature, and it's still unsaturated fat? How did you do that? Well, this is how, okay? Trans fats. This is how. Because now it's straight, just like your saturated fat. It's going to be solid at room temperature, okay? Oh, but they also say there is no trans fats in this margarine, guys. There is no trans fats that you've added. That part is true. And that part is the only part that you need to disclose. The fact that you've added hydrogens, and that's what changed the shape of the molecule and got rid of that kink and produced trans fats in the process, you don't need to disclose that. So that's how they get away with it. So hydrogenated oil, that's what that means. It's trans fats. Okay. So these guys are not great. Like we've said, they get formed when they're exposed to heat, light, and air. Okay. Oh, come on now. Every time I move the stupid bar, it's okay. So I'm gonna do this one more time, and then I'm not gonna do it again. Stop sharing. Okay, so then I share again. If you guys have any questions, we're gonna have a question and answer session. So feel free to jot them down, and then we'll address them.
You know
Address them
what?
then.
You know, why don't you just leave that whole screen up so that it doesn't keep freezing? Like, it's fine if we can see all of the words,
Yeah, that's great.
you know?
That's a good idea.
Like, I'm okay with it. I mean,
Yeah.
unless other people aren't, but it's just otherwise it's going to keep freezing for you, yeah?
I know. Let's try that. See, the thing is that these slides they're automated, so things appear as we cover them because some
Oh,
of them it's gonna be too confusing if the whole thing is there. We're
right.
gonna we're gonna try this again. Let me move this bar first. Okay, start from current slide. Okay. So we mentioned that, yeah, like we said, you know, they impair the function of the cell membrane because there are these screwed up things that, you know, they have a double bond, but meanwhile they're straight. And they are solid at room temperature, so they behave like saturated fatty acids. And yes, they're slow to break down because we have not evolved to deal with this messed up thing that has properties of both, right? And one of the things that they do, which is harmful, is they make your blood thicker. So your heart has to work harder, and therefore they increase your blood pressure. And they also make the walls of your blood not as flexible, so they don't expand when blood comes in. Therefore, if they don't expand and blood comes in, the blood pressure goes up. Okay. And they impair the energy production because they impair the function of the cell membrane and in organelles like your mitochondria, but that's where your energy is produced. They also drive inflammation. So where do these trans fats come from? Like I said, that's your vegetable shortening, your margarine, hydrogenated oil, and any, you know, improperly produced and improperly stored oils. So that's usually in your salad dressings, sauces and marinades. Those are very notorious for using cheap, harmful fats. So look at the ingredients. Most of the time you're going to see canola oil, vegetable oil, hydrogenated oil, you know, stuff like that. So avoid those things. And they're usually used in, you know, salad dressing sauces and marinades, your bakery, your desserts, things like that. Poorly processed, refined, and poorly stored oils. So those are your gigantic, you know, Costco size plastic clear containers with, you know, vegetable oil. I mean, it's called vegetable oil, but by then I don't even know what the hell that is. It's nothing edible, let me tell you that much. And the trans fats are formed when we expose unsaturated fats to heat, light, and air, as we already mentioned. So that's your high temperature cooking, okay, especially barbecuing and things like that. Okay, so essential fatty acids and non-essential fatty acids. So non-essential fatty acids, the reason why they're not essential is because we can get them from food. Okay, we don't need to, yeah, our body doesn't need to, if our body doesn't make it, we can get them from food. Okay, and essential fatty acids, we're not making them. We need to get them from food. So our body cannot make it. So that's why they're called essentials, because we can't make them endogenously. We have to get them exogenously. So these are your EFAs. Okay, so EFAs have two main categories, omega-3 and omega-6. okay, LNA or LA for short. And the only reason why they're called omega-3 and omega-6 is because the first double bond, these are unsaturated fatty acids, right? So they have double bonds. So the first double bond in omega-3, it's on carbon number 3, and in omega-6 is on carbon number 6. So that's all that means. Little factoid you guys can use if you're on a date and you know you want to make a great impression and you're nervous and you don't know what to say. So you can be like, did you know omega-3 fatty acid is called omega-3 because of the first double bond on carbon 3? And your date will be like, oh my God, you're so smart. How did you know that? And then you'll be like, because I've attended this awesome webinar on the fabulous lives of fats. And then, you know, you'll have like chemistry and you'll get along great and get married and live happily ever after. All because you joined us to talk about that. So there you go. That's your omega-3 and omega-6. Okay, so those are your essential fatty acids. We need to get them from food, and you can talk about them on your dates. So what do they do for us? Just like fats in general, saturated and unsaturated, essential fatty acids, they do many things for us. They transport oxygen, and that's a good thing, right? So they're part of hemoglobin production, which is needed for oxygen. They're part of the cell membrane. Again, they add to the fluidity so that stuff can come in and stuff can leave. They are needed for clearance of lactic acid. Collection of lactic acid will drive your inflammation, so that's a good thing. Required for hormone production, that's also a good thing. They're part of cell division, very relevant in the world of cancer because improper cell division is how tumors start. Needed for brain development. So any kind of brain dysfunction, this is one of the things to look at. They They modulate inflammation. So if things work right, they bring on inflammation where we need it, and they tone it down when we don't need it anymore. They drive metabolism. So in, like we already mentioned, in cases of slow metabolism and obesity, that's another thing to look at. And very important in present days, they slow tumor growth, specifically the omega-3 ones. So I work a lot in the world of cancer. So we use that a lot in that realm. So they do all these great things, but not on their own. They need helpers, and these helpers are called cofactors. And that's your, you know, things like your B vitamins, your magnesium, your vitamin C, your zinc, selenium. And this is to show you guys that, you know, it's always in a world of true health, things work in concert. Things work synergistically. Nothing is a panacea to nothing. Nothing has 100% effect on anything by itself. It's together, okay? We're all in this together, like we've been saying for how many bloody years. So it's true when it comes to holistic health, okay? So, you know, if you wine and dine at McDonald's and you're like, oh, EFAs decrease inflammation, I'm gonna stock up on those, nothing will happen, okay? So it's all, everything has to come, everything has to be part of the picture. Okay, whoa, look at this. So I know this is intimidating, but and we're gonna go through this, guys. Okay, so please don't tune out, don't go anywhere, stay with me, you're gonna like this. This is the lifespan of our EFAs. This is the lifespan of omega-3 and omega-6. This is something that you can also include as a conversation on your dates, okay? So omega-6, your LA, omega-3, your NLA. So, you know, when you start as a newborn, this is where you are. And then you go from toddler to, you know, hormonal teenager to kind of an adult, and old age. This is what your essential fatty acids do. As they go from stage to stage to stage, they're converted in different things. Now, those things are important for our health because those things do a lot of good things, okay? So that's what these boxes are. These are the stages of the life of your EFAs. Now here in the first stage, we start with a newborn, omega-6 and omega-3. And then we come across an enzyme called delta-6 desaturase, D6D. We need it for both omega-6 and omega-3 to move to the next stage, to move from newborn to toddler. We need this enzyme for both, okay? Now, what happens if you are overdosing on omega-6 and you have insufficient omega-3? You're gonna use up your D6D. And the little bit of omega-3 that you consume, that won't be very useful because you're not gonna have enough enzyme to process it to move from newborn to toddler. So your omega-3 is gonna be stuck in useless newborn stage, okay? So that's why, you know, too much of anything is not good. And in our daily food consumption, the proportion of omega-6 to omega-3s should be somewhere 2-to-1. We should be consuming twice as much of omega-6 as we're consuming of omega-3. What the current picture is, it's about 30 times as much. We're consuming 30 times more of omega-6 than we do of omega-3s. Now that's a problem, okay? Because none of these processes happen, and that will drive a lot of diseases, okay? So this D6D guy he's quite of a VIP, guys, okay? Because one of the reasons is that, you know, like the show starts here. This is the beginning to the rest of the show. If we have problems here, nothing will happen downstream, okay? So this D6D guy is important, and this guy is disrupted by things like trans fats, okay? And things like toxins, your pesticides, your you know, phthalates in your personal care products, in your artificial scents, your perfumes. Alcohol affects this one a lot. Excess sugar pretty much halts it, okay? And of course, just like we mentioned, excess omega-6, because you're gonna use up your D6D and not enough will be left over to process your omega-3. Now, the other reason why I really wanted to include this scary looking picture is to explain to you guys why when you hear blanket statements in the world of nutrition, things like, you know, everyone should be vegan, or everyone should be carnivore, or everyone should go keto, or everyone should go Mediterranean, or anything that someone claims is good for everyone. This is why that's wrong. Okay, look at this. So if everything is great, the world is fantastic, everything works great, we go from step to step to step to step, no problem, right? If you're built like this, you're gonna do great whether you're vegan or not vegan or whatever. Like everything will work out for you, right? However, if things don't work that great, okay, let's look at these guys, EPA and DHA. You may have heard about them because they're really good for brain health, okay, EPA and DHA. EPA and DHA, as you can see, they come originally from your omega-3s. You can also get them from fish, if you eat fish, or eggs. Now, I'm gonna tell you that veganism is great for everyone. And because I'm a nutritionist, you're gonna say, yeah, must be true, so I'm gonna go vegan. What if you're one of those people that does not convert flaxseed to this guy, to this guy, to this guy, and then to this guy very well? You're not eating fish, so you can't get your EPA and DHA from fish. and you're not converting very well, what's going to happen? You're going to be deficient in EPA and DHA. And what's going to happen? One of the things will happen will be brain health will be affected. So things like inflammation, mood disorders, ADHD, and the rest of DHDs, okay, and lots of other things, not just brain health, okay. So this is one of the many reasons why, you know, like these blanket statements that are very popular these days in cyber world that are simply not true. We're individuals. We have our own unique genetic makeup that nobody else has, just us. So how can I say that any one approach is good for everybody? We all look different. Like we are as unique as anything gets. There is nobody on this earth like you. You're the only one, and nobody will ever be on this earth like you ever again. So how can we say that one thing is good for everyone? No. In the world of holistic health, there is no blanket statement. It's all individual, right? So the other thing that I want you to take a look at, these things called prostaglandins, okay? So they're byproducts of the life of omega-3s and omega-6. Now here, omega-6 gives rise to series 1 and series 2 prostaglandins, and these are inflammatory prostaglandins. They will drive inflammation. Omega-3s give rise to anti-inflammatory prostaglandins, okay? Now, these days, we've heard inflammation, bad, 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 anti-inflammatory, good, good, good. And for the most part, it's true. However, we do need inflammation, just not as much as we get it, okay? We need inflammation for tissue healing. We need inflammation for tissue regeneration, okay? So, but we need to stop it when we need to stop it. So if we're gonna go again, blanket statements, omega-6, no good, no good, no good. They lead to inflammation. You know, like this arachidonic acid that comes from meat and eggs, no good, no good. They lead to series 1 and series 2 inflammatory prostaglandins. Well, they do, but we need those in the right amounts, okay? So we're gonna move on and say goodbye to this very intimidating slide. Hopefully you don't find it as intimidating as it once was. So again, the point here to drive home is the amounts, okay, the proportion, because this D6D guy, he is an important guy because he starts the whole show. If you have dysfunction in this guy or insufficiency, it will lead to a lot of fairly common diseases. And that's what it leads to. Omega-3 deficiency, which is driven by having too much omega-6, so you use up your D6D. Take a look at this: ADHD, asthma and allergies, anxiety and depression, you know, things like obesity, fibromyalgia. All of these things are driven by insufficiency of your omega-3s, you know, arthritis, skin disorders. You know, the health of your skin does come from within. And I'm going to save you guys lots of money. Lots of money I'm going to save you right now, okay? All of those fancy lotions and potions that we spend ridiculous money on, they're toxic and they do nothing for your skin. Why? Because they're made with petroleum byproducts as the base. Yeah, they can add, you know, vitamin E and hyaluronic acid and many other things that, you know, they say are good for your skin. But the problem is that there is a lot of stabilizing agents that need to be added to those lotions, and that's why they can last on the shelves for a very long time. And yeah, they're made of petroleum byproducts as the base. So they're not great for your skin and they cost ridiculous amount of money. First, if you want healthy skin, look on the inside. This is where it comes from, okay? If you want to put something on top, that's great. Coconut oil has 0 ingredients in it and fantastic for your skin, okay? What I do, my go-to skin regimen is I make my own moisturizing cream. It's super easy. What I do is I take coconut oil and I take shea butter. It doesn't matter proportions. You can do 1-to-1, you can do one, whatever you have in stock, okay? And I melt it in a double boiler, just like you would melt chocolate, okay? So, and then once it's melted, put it in your fridge, let it solidify. It will become a solid mass. Take it out of your fridge, okay? Let it kind of warm up a bit so that it's a little bit softer. Take your blender and whip it. It will look and feel just like whipped cream, and use it on your skin. It's cheap, it's absolutely toxin free, and it's amazingly nourishing for your skin. So lots of money I just saved you guys right there. So what happens when we're deficient in D6D, which will lead to omega-3 deficiency? Cancer. That's what will happen. Premature aging, because that affects the health of your skin, right? High cholesterol, because that will be driven by inflammation. Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, those are, that affects your lining of your GI tract. Cirrhosis of the liver and other things that are not fun at all. That's what happens. So where do we get omega-6? From all these things. See how many things? Lots of things. Where do we get omega-3s? These few things. So that's another thing that drives to the current 30-to-1 as opposed to 2-to-1 ratio. The other problem is farmed meat and farmed fish. They're fed grains. Grains are high in omega-6. So that will affect the consistency of fat in that meat. So these days, when you eat farmed meat, it has a lot more omega-6 in it than it should, because of its unnatural diet. So that's why farmed meat or fish is not a good idea, because their proportion of fat is screwed up because of this. Hemp heart is my fave. Why it's my fave? Because it contains the perfect proportion of your omega-6 to omega-3s. And it's like crazy versatile. I put it on my salads, I put it in my smoothies, I sprinkle it on my soup as garnish. It makes the soup look pretty. I sprinkle it on any savory dishes. You can even sprinkle it on like your yogurt, your pudding. You can really use it anywhere. And it's got the right amount of both. Okay, that's why it's my favorite. Okay, so prostaglandins, we just met them, right? These guys. So series 1 and 2 anti-inflammatory, they come from your omega-3s. What do? They make your blood thinner, okay? So before, if you have high blood pressure and before jumping on blood pressure medication, you might wanna look into your omega-3s because they will also thin your blood. They control, that's how they affect your blood pressure, is they remove excess sodium. And they help to make your blood vessels wider, also helping to reduce your blood pressure. Very helpful in cases of insulin sensitivity. Of course, they're part of your brain health by driving EPA and DHA, part of your immune system and nerve function. And they also dampen series 1 and 2 and not anti-inflammatory prostaglandins, right? Do you see how things work in concert? Again, it's all about balance. Now, when we're going to look at series 2 inflammatory prostaglandins coming from omega-6, don't be automatically scared because these are inflammatory. We need those. Why we need those? They make your blood thicker. You don't want to bleed to death if your blood is too thin. Now, again, it's all about balance. You don't want your blood so thick you're going to get a heart attack, right? So, and they drive blood pressure by making your blood vessels narrower, okay? You don't want them too wide where you have zero blood pressure, and you don't want them too narrow where your blood pressure is through the roof. So it's all about balance, guys. So there is nothing bad, nothing good. It's the togetherness and the proportion that dictates that. Cholesterol. Now, this is the body that has a bad rep bad reasons. Now, cholesterol is transported by something that we know, HDL and LDL. HDL is usually referred to as, you know, the bad cholesterol. No, HDL is the good one. LDL is the lousy one or the bad cholesterol. And I don't really like it's quite misleading, those terms, but that's what these guys are. And so again, HDL and LDL, that's not cholesterol. That's the kind of like the taxi, the car that your cholesterol uses to get around. And depending on where your cholesterol is going, that's what makes it HDL or LDL, right? So HDL is, you know, the good cholesterol. The reason why it's the good cholesterol is because HDL takes cholesterol from tissue to your liver for excretion. Okay, so that's why it's called the good cholesterol. So if your cholesterol wants to leave, it will get into HDL taxi and start going. Okay. Now, LDL drives cholesterol from liver to tissues. And that's why it's called bad cholesterol, because, you know, instead of getting the hell out, it's going in, right? But keep in mind that LDL, that taxi, the passenger is not only cholesterol there. There are other passengers in it. And those passengers are fat-soluble vitamins. Okay, so if your cholesterol is high and you're gonna jump on anti-cholesterol medication like Crestor, okay, and your cholesterol is not being transported in LDL taxi, not only are you inhibiting cholesterol, you're also inhibiting fat-soluble vitamins, which are your antioxidants. Okay, that's not a good thing. So our cholesterol is removed via stool. So when you poop, that's why poops are very important. That's one of many reasons why good poops is the key to health. Okay. Now, in order to remove cholesterol with your poop, you need sufficient fiber. Okay. And for that, you also need vitamin C, your B vitamins, calcium, zinc, your omega-3s. So helpers, cofactors, right? So again, things work in concert. So if you have high cholesterol, are you constipated? Maybe those are the things to look at first instead of, you know, just going straight for Crestor. All right. So function of cholesterol, it does a lot of good things for us, guys. We do need it, just like everything else. There is no good, there is no bad. There is just, you know, proportion. It's part of the membrane function. It dictates its rigidity, just like saturated fatty acids. It also makes it more rigid so that harmful stuff cannot get in. And this is why when inflammation increases, that signals to your body something's wrong. So your body responds by shutting the doors, because if something's wrong, we need to protect the inside of our cells. So we're going to close the gates. So your body is going to put more cholesterol into your membrane. So when your cholesterol is high, decreasing cholesterol is not going to do a whole lot other than just decrease cholesterol. Are you addressing the sources of inflammation, which results in high cholesterol? That would be, you know, the start. Just reducing cholesterol is not gonna do anything, right? You see how that's a problem, just jumping on the medication. Now, cholesterol is needed in hormone synthesis. So when you jump on Crestor, you're affecting that. And that's a big deal. We need it for vitamin D synthesis. Huge factor in our immune system, which immune system has been very, very relevant. Well, I mean, it's always relevant, but in the last couple of years. We need a cholesterol for things like bile synthesis. Bile is absolutely essential for digestion of fat. Now, here's what happens, guys. You go to your doctor, you have high cholesterol. They put you on cholesterol medication. Now you're not making bile. You eat fat, you're not digesting fat properly. So now you're going to be deficient in omega-3s and omega-6s. And, you know, lots of things are going to cascade from there. Like you see how, you know, downstream a lot of stuff happens. So what did you solve by getting on cholesterol medication? Nothing. What did you make worse? A lot of things. We need it for skin health because, again, it makes your membrane rigid, so it blocks harmful things from coming in. So again, the health of your skin comes from within. Where do we get cholesterol? Cholesterol is so important, guys, that every cell in your body makes it. Yeah, we don't need to consume it. Our body can make it. Okay, so it's especially by liver cells, intestinal cells, and your sex organs. Now we do have what's called a negative feedback mechanism. So if we eat more cholesterol, our body will just make less. So that's how the balance is maintained. 70% of people can do that if everything works the way that it should. Okay, so that's what negative feedback loop mechanism is. Now, of course, we also get exogenously from animal products, so that's where it comes from. Now, what increases cholesterol? Few things. Like we said, inflammation. Cholesterol is a messenger. Okay, so like they say, don't kill the messenger, I'm just a messenger. That's what cholesterol is. So if it's high, look elsewhere. Okay, don't go after cholesterol. It's like saying, like every time we see fire, there's firemen. If we were to get rid of firemen, maybe they'll help. That's exactly how it is. It's a ridiculous approach, right? So inflammation, what drives inflammation? Poor nutrition, poor lifestyle, toxicity, stress, metabolic disorders, all the things that we already know. Increased consumption. Now, like I said, 70% of people, if everything works right, then the more we eat, the less we make. Now, with current lives, with current toxicity, with current stress levels, physicals and psychologicals, everything working right doesn't happen. So sometimes those mechanisms are altered. So this is where, you need to either eat less, if that's the problem, but most of the time when our cholesterol is elevated due to inflammation. Now, sometimes there is a thing called familiar, let me pronounce this word, hypercholesterolemia. There you go. Okay, so this is where it's driven by genetics. You've inherited some crappy stuff. Now, that's only 4% of the population, guys. So this is not, a reason to say, well, my mom had it, my dad had it, it's genetic. There is nothing I can do. That's only 4% of the population. And even in that case, there is a lot you can do. All right. There's one of my favorite saying, genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. And 99% of the time it's that. So don't blame your parents, okay? Constipation will increase your cholesterol. Why? Because this is how you get rid of it. If you don't poop, cholesterol stays in. That's simple. Menopause, guys, this is an interesting one. Remember, your cholesterol is used to produce estrogen, okay? When you go into your menopause, your ovaries stop producing estrogen. So when that first happens, your brain says, oh my God, there is a lot less estrogen. We need to produce more estrogen. We need to raise cholesterol. Okay, so that's what your brain says. So cholesterol rises, but ovaries are not using up that cholesterol because ovaries are retired. They're not making estrogen. Okay, so that disconnect will happen when you first go into menopause. If everything is on point, if your nutrition is on point, if your lifestyle is on point, if you're addressing other things, that will balance out. Okay, because a lot of women, they go, for their checkup, they're into their menopause and their cholesterol is high, and their doctor says, well, your cholesterol is high, you need to jump on Crestor or something like that. Don't, okay, at least not right away. What decreases cholesterol? Big revelation, healthy nutrition and lifestyle, okay? Your omega-3s, guys, your omega-3s will decrease your cholesterol because they will decrease inflammation, okay? And of course, reduction of toxicity and stress, which drives inflammation and drives cholesterol, okay? So it's really that simple. Take home message. If you've learned nothing from what we've talked about, take this home. It's simple, guys. It's really simple. Eat organic, whole foods, mostly plants, not too much. Because I hear this a lot, like, oh my God, I don't know what to eat. You know, when you go in the internet, this person is saying one thing, that person is saying another thing. Don't listen to any person. If you just stick with this, you're good. Okay, yes, there are nuances, you know, there's like a lot of cases where we need to dig deeper, but this is the fundamentals. Start here, all right? And, you know, if you're not where you want to be, then we can dig deeper, but this is to start with. Use animal or coconut oil for cooking because, like I said, it's heat, light, and air, and this is saturated fats, and they do well with those because they have single bonds, and single bonds are great. So use extra virgin, again, properly stored oil. That's your olive or avocado. That's what I use, you know, and use it for garnishes and dressings. This is not to cook in. When it comes to fish, fantastic source of your omega-3s, your EPAs and DHAs for brain health, amongst other things. But stick with small cold water and wild caught fish. Why small? You want to minimize your exposure to mercury because the bigger the fish, the bigger is the mercury content. So tuna is, I love tuna, but you know, that's not something that you want to have on any kind of regular basis. Salmon, sardines, mackerel, those are smaller fish and much better. Wild grass-fed and finished meat. Why? Because it will have the proper proportion of omega-6 to omega-3s, because it will eat the things that it was designed to eat. It's proper diet, okay? Daily handful of pre-soaked nuts. That's where you get your nut oils from, and you know, a couple of tablespoons of seeds. Combine that with berries and vegetables, and it will give you the antioxidants that you need to preserve those very unstable but very healthful fats. Okay, so what did we talk about today? What is fat and what is oil? Fat is something that's solid at room temperature, and oil is liquid at room temperature. Which fat is harmful and which fat is healthy? Well, harmful fats are fats that are sold in conventional stores in ridiculous size containers made of plastic. Okay, those are harmful fats. Stick with small scale production, stick with organic if you can. When it comes to vegetable sourced oils, stick with cold pressed extra virgin olive oil or avocado oil. That's my advice. And use saturated fat for cooking. Okay, so sources of healthy fats, like we just mentioned, and harmful fats, like we just mentioned. Should you avoid seed oils? Don't avoid seeds, but avoid their oils. Which fat is good to cook with? Saturated fat. And what is cholesterol? Cholesterol is just a messenger, guys. Don't shoot the messenger. That's all it is. And triglycerides is the currency of our fat bank accounts. So that's what you see on your blood work. Okay. This has gone for a lot longer than I planned. That's my chronic disease. So thank you guys for sticking through it and persevering, especially through the chemistry stuff. I really hope that you found it helpful. If you have any questions, please, speak now. I
Thanks,
was gonna say
Ina.
speak now or forever hold your peace, but don't hold your, just speak.
Thank you so much. This was so informative, and I learned so much, especially about that flaxseed already ground that's in my kitchen cupboard that I'll be throwing out. So, because it's been in there for a while, that I bought at the health store. Yeah, so I just really want to thank you. And there are some questions in the chat if you don't mind me asking them of you.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so Elaine wondered, what about ghee and what about organic raw tahini?
Ghee is a great source of fat. Yeah, if it came from healthy cows. Yeah, because ghee is basically clarified butter is what it is. Really great for people that are super sensitive to dairy and they can't even tolerate butter. Usually most of them they will do okay with ghee. Yeah. Tahini, what's in tahini? That's sesame seeds, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so tahini is basically ground up sesame seeds. That, I mean, once you grind seeds, this is when you expose the oils to things like light, heat, and air. So if it hasn't been stored for a long time, if it's not in a plastic container, tahini is great. I think like it's pretty easy to make it yourself. So my suggestion would be, if you're planning on having some tahini tonight or tomorrow, just make some, put it in an airtight glass jar, put it in your fridge, and it's good there for, a couple of days. So yeah, tahini is great
Okay.
if it's stored properly.
Leah wanted to say she's so excited to get hitched after this webinar because now she has all this great dating advice on
Yeah. Yeah.
So Veronique had a question about, can you get rid of the trans fat that is in your fat stores already?
You can, yeah, you can. But, like I said, your body eliminates it very slow because it's confused as to, what to do with it. When you lose fat tissue, you excrete the toxicity and, including trans fats that are stored in it. So yeah, if it's like the bucket, right? If you drain the bucket, if you don't refill it, then, your bucket will be empty. Yeah, so you can.
Okay. Do you have more triglycerides if you have more fat mass?
Yeah, your triglycerides, it's like, yeah, like I said, it's the currency of fat storage. So if, uh, we store fat, right? We store it around our organs to provide insulation and shock absorption and temperature control. So, we have excess fat. So we're going to use it there because that's important. We're going to use it in our cell membranes because that's important. We're going to use it in all areas where we need to use it. So we've used it everywhere. Everything is good, but we still have fat coming in. So we got to put it somewhere. So now we put it in things where it doesn't really go, like in your bloodstream, like in your liver, in cases of fatty liver, like in your other organs, like impaired pancreas or inflamed pancreas or, blocked gallbladder. And then your gallbladder gets inflamed and it gets removed because, that's the problem, is that you have a gallbladder, not why it's inflamed. So yeah, so that's triglycerides. Yes, it will be stored in various places eventually if you have fat coming in and too much of it. It's like hoarders, right? Like, have you guys ever seen that show Hoarders on TLC? Yeah. Yeah. You go and you buy a few things and that's fine. You put them in your cabinet. You go buy a few more things. You put them on your mantle. And then, you put it here. Next thing you know, like your house is full of stuff. So that's your triglycerides in your body.
And then there was a question, are triglycerides more likely to increase on a higher carbohydrate diet than on a low carb or high fat diet?
It's some of it is driven by what your genetic makeup is, but a lot of it is whether or not it's high carbohydrate or high fat doesn't make a difference or any kind of significant difference. What makes a bigger difference is the nature of those carbohydrates and the nature of those fats. Are they, carbohydrates from processed food? Is it, high fructose corn syrup type of a carbohydrate? Or is it, buckwheat type of a carbohydrate? Very different, right? So, and also when it comes to fat, is it, maple leaf bacon that you buy in Walmart? You guys from States don't know what maple leaf is, but it's very like run-of-the-mill meat company here. Or is it, bacon that you got at the farmer next door that raises the pigs in the right way? So that will make a difference, like the nature of it. That's what will drive inflammation and triglycerides.
Okay. Can you take an omega-3 supplement and what is the ratio of DHA to EPA that's the best?
Yeah, you should definitely take omega-3 supplements. The quality of those supplements is key because, like I said, these are highly unsaturated essential fatty acids, and they are very finicky. They're even worse than my mother. You don't treat them right, they become toxic. So quality is important. And when it comes to supplements, quality most of the time is driven by price. For those of you guys that are in States, there is a company called Physica Energetics. They are awesome. They used to be in Canada. Canadian government and Health Canada drove them out because, they want Canadians to be healthier. So now they moved to States. So they have very good quality supplements, especially omega-3s, EPA, and DHA. Now, the ratio, you should be getting about 1,000 of combined. So should be somewhere 1-to-1, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but more or less equal amounts of each. But in total, about 1,000 of EPA plus DHA.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And when you were speaking about you need fiber to get rid of the cholesterol because so we poo,
Yeah.
do you have a recommended amount of fiber we should be trying to get per day?
Somewhere what's recommended is about 30 to 40 grams of fiber. Yeah, but like if you're into measuring things, that's fantastic. If you're not, just make sure that you consume half of your plate in at least lunch and dinner should be fresh, multicolored produce. Okay. And then you sprinkle some nuts and seeds on top of that, and you're good.
Good. Can you take fish oil if you also take blood thinners?
No, I wouldn't recommend it. Your blood is gonna be, your blood may be too thin. Yeah.
So what would someone do if maybe to get because that's omega-3s, right? The fish oil. So what would somebody who's on blood thinners, would you just recommend that that's definitely someone that might need to actually eat more fish?
You can eat more fish. Yes. You need to address why are you on blood thinners? Start there. Why is it's likely, you have high blood pressure. What are the things in your life that contribute to high blood pressure? So look at what you're eating, look at your exposure to toxicity, look at your, and that's, like psychological toxicity too, guys, not only physical toxins. How is your sleep? Are you sleeping? Are you exercising? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is low HDL an independent risk factor for heart disease?
No.
Okay. How much fat should we be eating in a day?
How much fat should we be eating in a day? So when you look at your plate, so half of it is, multicolored fresh produce, hopefully, right? So that leaves you half of the plate. So the other quarter should be your protein.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other quarter should be your whole food carbohydrates. Okay. So because I'm not into measuring, so this is how I do. Now
Yeah.
your protein will contain fat, right? Because if it's like good quality protein from animals, it will contain fat. If it's fish, it will contain fat. And then in addition to that, you can, use your good quality olive oil or avocado oil, about, maybe 2 tablespoons on your dressing, on that other half with fresh produce. And then, you can, drizzle a little bit on your whole food carbohydrates. So that's kind of my approach to things. You're looking at, maybe like what, I don't even know. I don't know, maybe like 50 grams of fat. That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I don't measure when I eat. That's kind of my approach to things.
Yeah, and I think what you said again about, just having like a balanced approach to it, right? To make sure we're not overdoing it on the fats or overdoing it on any one category for sure. Then the
Yeah, if
question,
you use it right, you're not gonna overdo it. Like if you use, oil as a dressing and a garnish, you're not gonna overdose on it. If you sprinkle some nuts and seeds on your salads or in your yogurt, you're not gonna overdose. Like if you stay reasonable, then you're not gonna overdose on anything.
yeah, more is not better in this
No,
case.
no, it's all about balance. Yeah.
And there are a few people are wondering if you have any other suggestion of a brand of supplements that is not Physica Energetics.
Yeah, they're impossible to get in Canada, Ina.
No, they're possible. I've gotten them. Yeah,
But
like you'll pay.
that's because you're a healthcare practitioner. I just went
Oh,
online. You cannot get it unless you like are a
yeah,
healthcare practitioner.
yeah. That's another thing is, like how to determine quality supplements. Most quality supplement companies do not sell to the public. They sell to natural healthcare practitioners like naturopaths and nutritionists. And then these natural healthcare practitioners distribute them to their clients as needed. So that's kind of how that works. So yeah, Physica Energetics, just like many other, companies that we deal with because we trust their quality, they don't sell to the public. So if you have a naturopath or a nutritionist, they can order it for you.
Yeah, but I don't want to have a naturopath or a nutritionist in order to order supplements. That's not.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
good.
Yeah. So the other option is like most of the time, health food stores carry decent quality things. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, when you look at, look at the ingredients and see what's in there, and like pay special attention to non-medicinal ingredients.
Okay.
Yeah. That's how you can tell.
Do you have any feelings on what is it, Pure Encapsulations?
Yeah, that's a good brand. Yeah.
That's
Pure
a good brand.
encapsulations. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can get that pretty widely. And
What did you
again,
Marissa? What did you say?
Pure Encapsulations.
Okay.
And the other thing that I have done before, because I couldn't get the supplement I wanted, you actually don't have to go and see some of these naturopaths, like especially even in Toronto. You can just order the supplements off their website. And so you don't have to have like a session with them or anything. A lot of them will just, because they're people that carry these brands. So it doesn't always require like a session.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other one is so there's a company, they're kind of like an umbrella company. They're called Ceroil. So there is Ceroil.com, and those guys are in States. And then there is Ceroil.ca, and those guys are in Canada. I deal with them a lot. But they also offer to the public. You can order their products on their website, and they carry things like Genestra. Genestra is a very good quality supplement company. They also do Pure Encapsulations. They do Douglas Labs, and they have Unda products. So yeah, we order because they offer practitioners a practitioner price. So we buy it for a lot less from Ceroil, but yeah, they also offer decent quality products to the public. So you can go on ceroil.ca or .com and have access to those companies as well.
Great. I'm trying to see another one here. Someone said, so on your plate, you are 1/3 protein, 1/3 plants, and 1/3 whole carb. Is that your plate division?
No, it's so half of my plate is usually fresh multicolored produce. So that's kind of like a salad. And then that leaves 2/4. So 1/4 is protein and the other quarter is whole food carbohydrates. So that's either, sweet potatoes or rice or buckwheat or quinoa or, like something that hasn't been messed with.
Okay.
That little quarter on your plate, Ina, that's
Mhm.
protein. I'm just wondering what you mean by protein, because a few slides back you said only eat animal protein 1 to 2 times a month. So I'm like, okay, that's barely at all. So what is the protein that's on your plate?
Yeah, you could have many things. You can have fish, tofu. I eat a lot of tofu,
Mhm.
eggs, things like, lentils are a great source of protein. Tempeh is a great source of protein. Yeah, those are the things I use.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Awesome. I think that's it, unless anyone else has any other questions.
I mean, is it bad, Ina? Like I eat I eat like probably chicken or hamburger every day. It's bad according to your numbers, I think, because you said 1 to 2 times a month is best. I eat it once a day.
But again, Maggie, we also have to take into consideration that those of us with food addiction have a different journey than other individuals, right? And so
Right.
if you find animal protein more satiating and it keeps you in recovery, then that's going to be different, right? So, but could you have more fish with that? Could you
Yes,
use
yes,
more eggs with that, right?
yes,
Instead of
yes,
saying like, okay, now I watch this, I'm going to change my whole food plan and that's going to throw
yes.
me off the ability I had, right? Is, this is what she's recommending for, and this is probably works for a lot of people, but we just have to be mindful that we're not every person, right? That we have different concerns as well sometimes.
Yeah, because my thinking is, chicken is better than an entire cake.
Yeah, exactly. 100%, Maggie.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that like a general statement, for our health and for planetary health, that's my suggestion. But that's a suggestion that covers all humankind, right? Now, like
Yeah.
I said, we're all individuals. We have our own individual genetic makeup and our own individual lives and bodies. So we
Mhm.
need to come up with nuances that fit those individualities. And also, it's all relative, right? So yeah, like Clarissa said, is it better than eating cake every day? Yeah, I mean, is it better than, yeah, like probably eating meat every day is not as great as not eating meat every day, but it's much better than down in a cake every day, that's for sure. So if those are your two choices, go with chicken.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, I think we are good. So thank you for joining us today. And yeah, I'm going to send out the recording of this to the Sweet Sobriety group as well with her slides, if she will allow me to do that, or I'll just send her email and then you can email Ina yourself if you have any other questions.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions anytime, feel free to reach out, shoot me an email. I'm always available to answer any of your questions. And, like I love sharing the knowledge that I have. Knowledge is power. And I've been very, blessed and privileged to gain the knowledge that I have gained. And I love sharing it with people because that's what drives our health. Yeah. And we have to, we have to be active participants in our health journey. It's not an observer sport. It's not a spectator sport. We have to participate in it. Yeah.
Right. It's all about action, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me, guys. Yeah, I know it's much later than we planned, but like I said, that's my chronic condition. So
So,
yeah,
so valuable.
and if you guys want to do this again, I would love to. If you have any topics you want to cover, feel free to let me
Yeah,
know.
I'll do a bit of survey and find out. Absolutely.
Mm,
Thank you so much,
awesome.
Tina.
No problem. Have a great evening, guys, and we'll see each other soon.
If you like what you heard today, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.